Hello gamers, Powered Heal here, and today we're going to talk about the GDKP ban in WoW Classic 2024 Fresh. So I was going to make a video about this when it happened, but I kind of wanted to get the other videos out first, so a lot of these will be rolling out today. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to let you guys know what I thought about this. I already made a GDKP video. I'll link that in the description. In case you guys want to check that out. It might be like a bit of a longer one. I don't think this is going to be quite as long. I did some gameplay in the background there, but the servers are down now, so I'm just showing you guys the Priebus character. But yeah, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about it. I think it was kind of interesting. I'm going to start with my first impressions. So my first impression was that I was happy. Because it's kind of like a weight off my shoulder. Typically, whenever there's a GDKP scene, I'm usually pretty involved in it. I'm not necessarily leading it, but it's hard to sometimes find good healers for these things, right? And I'm usually playing in like a fairly top guild in like whatever version of the game I'm playing in, so I'm usually kind of connected with the people that are like running the GDKP, so it's usually a pretty good deal for me because I'll be in there on a healer. Healing gear is typically cheaper. Also, it's way easier to get healing Priebus, and it's way easier to outperform people with less gear on a healer than it is to outperform them on a DPS, just due to like the nature of the game and how like binary and static DPS is. It's kind of like if you're playing a mage in Molten Core, there's not a ton of room for optimization, and even something like a warrior. There's not like a ton of room for optimization there, like once you understand the basics of what you're trying to do. So healer is actually kind of a really good role for GDKP for essentially making money, and it kind of benefits me quite a bit to be in GDKP. So at one point, like during SOM, I was running like 4 or 5 GDKPs on like 4 or 5 different priests and then like 1 shaman or something. I think I actually had a druid too, maybe even been 6. I was running like a lot of GDKPs, and then in SOD, before I quit in phase 1, I think I had 7 or 8 priests and like a druid that I was running GDKPs on, and I was running them on all of them. And it just gets to be a lot, right? Like, I like raiding, and it's fun, but sometimes you just want to do other things. You just want to PvP, kill people in the world, do a bit of farming, stuff like that. And my problem with GDKP is it tends to like monopolize the way you play the game, because it's just by far the best option for you to make gold, right? Like, there's really no reason to try and make gold in other ways in an active way, when you can just do GDKP. And you just get like essentially a bunch of gold, and then you could also take your alt to like kind of like a lower level GDKP and then scoop loot from there. So it kind of does benefit me in a way, but I'm just happy that it's not there because I just don't want to deal with like the alt situation, right? Like, I'm already going to be making alts to do splits and stuff like that, and I don't really mind that at all, but with GDKP, it's just like the more alts you make, it's just like infinite cash, essentially, right? And when the 40-mans are the only raids that are active, it's kind of one thing, but once the 20-mans come into play, it's a disaster, man. It's so annoying. Like at some point, I was involved kind of in getting rosters together for some of this stuff, and it's so bad because it's like everybody wants to get in. People are upset when they don't get in. Getting in the 20-mans early is like super huge because people are selling the books and stuff like that at like crazy value, like the AQ20 and stuff like that. Some of the ZG loot goes crazy, like the Hakar wand. It's just like a complete mess, and it's just going to be a lot of stress off the shoulders to not have to worry about it. And I'm not going to feel any FOMO from not doing it because nobody else can do it either, right? So that's why I really like the ban, like, personally. And then how do I think it impacts the game? I mean, I think it just makes the game way better for the average player. I'm going to make a video right after this one about gold buying and how kind of like these two things are related. But there's a post like on Reddit. I was browsing the Reddit today where people were talking about how they should ban gold buyers like completely, like they should just give a permaban. And there was pushback in the thread, which I was kind of surprised to see because I feel like usually the opinion on Reddit is like kind of anti GDKP, anti gold buying, which I'm pretty much like I'm for both those things. Like I'm kind of anti GDKP and anti gold buying, I would say. But then usually what'll happen is like I don't know if people like start linking the thread in their discords and stuff, and then people start coming in on their Reddit accounts and like defending gold buying and GKP. But the tide, like it'll usually the post will get highly upvoted, and then like the tide will like turn in the comments. It seems like it's kind of funny, but basically they were talking about how they can't afford to like not buy gold because the game is just like the game like functions like that. They're trying to argue like you just need to buy gold to play the game. And I'm going to go into this in a lot more detail in the other video, so I'll save it for that. But that is just such a crock of BS, right? Like it's just delusional takes by people. It don't like when somebody says that, it almost makes me wonder if they've ever played the game. I mean, obviously they probably have, but they're just so completely wrong about that. And it kind of made me think of the GDKP situation because I was like, ironically, I could understand that view more if GDKP was in the game, because in the original Classic in 2019, in the beginning there was a lot of like soft res type runs or just pugs, but eventually things did kind of become more and more like streamlined, and it really did go to being like, okay, you're running a GDKP like constantly. Like nobody wanted to do anything but GDKPs, and I feel like that proliferated throughout a lot of the other expansions as well. Once like, especially in the other expansions, because there was already a currency base established, right? Like people already had huge amounts of currency from Classic when they went over to TBC, and then when they went over to Wrath of the Lich King, and so on. So GDKP just became like natural order of things in all these versions of the game. And for a new player, I can totally understand at that point, because it's like every run you're trying to join as a pug, is a GDKP. And people always be like, oh, well, you can just like go into a GDKP and you can earn your gold, and then, you can buy your item once you earn your gold. That is just complete BS, like 90% of the time. It doesn't really matter. Like, as a healer, that's sometimes true. You can sometimes get away with that, but as a DPS, that's never going to happen. Nobody is going to take a low gear DPS player as a carry and allow them to sit in the raid and basically just absorb gold while not buying anything. That's not how it works. I don't explicitly run these a lot of the times when they are like available. Like, I'm not the guy that's like at the very top setting everything up in that way, but I'm very close to the people that do, so I know like who they're inviting and what the strategy is and everything like that. And there's nobody is doing this to benefit the new player, or anything like that at all. It's basically, if you're a new player and you don't have gear, you are in that raid and you're in there to buy stuff. So if you don't have gear, you better have gold, and that's basically just how it is. So new players don't really have a chance in terms of being able to sit in a GDKP and like farm gold. Now, obviously that's not necessarily completely true, especially on like some of the more populated versions of the game. So for example, when Classic went to TBC, right, I'm sure there are runs where, they're kind of like lesser GDKPs where you can kind of rat in those and get a little bit of gold, and then maybe you have enough to be a buyer in the main GDKP. But it's a long process, right? And you're basically not getting loot for the entire time where you're having to rat in the other runs. And then when you do get into the main GDKP, you're expected to basically spend big. So it's not even like you earn that gold as a resource. It's basically just going into getting your gear when you do the big GDKP. So yeah, this whole idea that like the new players, it's easy for them to get into the system or something, it's just completely delusional. And like that's just a narrative that people say to keep the status quo of GDKP is being allowed active. So obviously, I think that this is like a really good change for like the casual players in this game, which I'm very happy with, because I think honestly you want a lot of your game to like cater to the casual to some degree, because like you want the game to be accessible. That's the only way it's going to have a population, especially a game this old. Like a new game, like when Ashes of Creation launches and stuff, since it's new, it's going to have a population right off the rip, just from reputation and everything like that. And it's going to take a while for people to get sick of it, probably, unless it's like really bad, no matter how they kind of set up the game. But I think especially in a game like this where the population may not be that high I think it will be high this time around, but it's not going to be as high as 2019. And I think catering to kind of like the casual player, then helping them play longer is something that that's not a bad thing to do. And also, I do think the problem is that the GDKP system is it's insanely abused, right? Like, in my opinion, people do buy a lot of gold for the explicit purpose of GDKPing. Now, that doesn't mean that, people aren't going to buy gold when there's no GDKP, right? And I made in my GDKP video, one of the criticisms I had mentioned about not having a GDKP, it's kind of scary, is that in some ways the gold buying can be more harmful when there's no GDKP, because it's kind of going into the stuff that's on the market, and it's not just getting essentially, like, it's not being distributed throughout the community, because you could sort of think of GDKPs in some ways as like redistribution, gold redistribution methods, that like the gold buyers, like their gold, like they're paying like 50K for a staff of the Shadow Flame, right? And like, so they basically just bought 50K worth of gold, and normally that would be terrible, right, for the server for one person to have 50K, but now it just went into the pot and it got distributed amongst 40 people. So, like, it's not really as bad. So that is kind of a thing, but the thing is, nobody is really buying 50K worth of gold if there's not a GDKP in the first place, I feel like, right? So realistically, I don't think that, like, not having GDKPs is gonna, like, mess up the market way more than it would otherwise, because I think the people that are going to be buying gold to buy stuff on the market, which is like the more harmful thing, they're still going to do that like regardless, and you're just going to not see as much people buying gold for items, essentially, right? Like, so now not as much gold is going to be bought overall, which is probably good, because that'll probably hurt the bots, and hopefully there'll be less of them in the game. I think the one thing that you will see is some of the people that went to GDKP to use it to like pay for their runs, essentially, like to pay for their consumes in another run, like those people may turn to buying gold. I'm already seeing some people in some guilds that are like mentioning that, like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to turn to buy gold. But yeah, I don't really think that that's a valid reason for, like, oh, we need to bring the GDKP back. Because in my opinion, it's just like, I don't know, too bad. Like, that's part of the game. Like, buying gold, or not buying gold. Farming gold and like having gold is just part of this game. This is like a much more old school MMO, right? It's not like a raid sim or anything like that. In my opinion, part of the challenge is kind of acquiring the resources, right? And if you struggle at acquiring the resources, then that is just like a weakness of your gameplay, in my opinion, in a game like this. So yeah, I don't think that because it's like these people are like, oh, well, now I'm gonna have to buy gold because I can't go to my like weekly GDKP and pay for all my consumes. My thing is just like, too bad. It's just better for the game overall. It's way better for a new player to come into the game and be able to go into a run and have a chance at getting what they want via soft res than to kind of like open up LFG and everything is like a GDKP, and they're asking, can I get in this run? And the guy's like, well, what's your budget? And it's like, I don't know, I just hit 60, man. I've got like 100 gold after buying my 40 mount, and the guy's like, like, you're not getting in here. Like, that's terrible, right? Like, that's gonna definitely make people quit. I even saw at some points people were doing like GDKP UBRS back in SOM and like GDKP 5-man, which is just like insane, right? So I think like if you just let this stuff become the norm, it just takes over the game. And, obviously there's people who don't like it because it benefits them to do it. And, it benefited me, but I mean, it's just too bad, right? It's better for the game if it doesn't exist. And like, I've never heard an argument that I've been able to take seriously that, that it's actually better to have GDKP in the game, like on the whole, right? Like there are aspects, like I mentioned, right, where GDKP might provide some sort of advantage. And I've heard of like the social arguments, like it builds community and stuff like that, but it really more builds like communities that are like exclusive, right? Like they're kind of excluding other people from the game. So it's not really building like real genuine communities. It's kind of building almost like underground mafia type organizations that are just like benefiting and like profiting off of having things set up in a certain way, and they're determining the invites, and they're trying to set up the raid in a way where people have to waste as much gold as possible to put into the pot, so they're getting the most gold. You know what I mean? They want to inflate the prices of items in the run, and are just setting like crazy minimums and stuff like this is almost never done in like an ethical way, and it's basically never done with people who farm their own gold, right? So the system would be absolutely fine if gold buying for this type of thing was like a super minority fringe case, and like most people were just using the gold that they made in the game to then buy items. Like that makes total sense, right? But that's just never the way it is. It's never going to be close to that because of human nature. And I think to like try and make that argument that like it's like, oh, we're losing the community aspect, it's like just so disingenuous, because like you guys know you're not for the community. Like you're trying to fuck the community over in like every possible way, and then you're like complaining when the game is dead and there's nobody that wants to play the game. So yeah, to me it just makes no sense trying to make any sort of argument for GDKP that's outside of I personally like it personally benefits me. I mean, anybody can make that argument and that's fine, right? But trying to argue that it's like somehow better for the game overall is just completely delusional. And yeah, that's my thoughts on it. So I'm looking forward to not having to deal with any of this. It's just, yeah, I'm just going to be able to kind of like target what I want on my alts, and I'm not going to have like 5 priests to feel like I'm making the best money per hour, and it's going to be great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think. And like I said, I'll have another video coming out soon about the gold buying thing, and it's kind of like how it's related to that. And I really want to pop off on that one. But until then, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you like the content, and talk to you later.